this is really something else, I tell you. So one of the reasons I became a writer is so I didn't have to talk, and here I am, ready to talk. I can't thank you all enough for coming. This has been a long time coming for me. I think those of you who know me really well know that I'm kind of an emotional guy, and I wear my heart on my sleeve, so I'll try not to cry, okay? I'll try my best. I look around, I see family, having my parents here. My immediate family is really important to me. I see high school friends, I see neighbors, I see college friends, I see co-workers, I see people I played softball with 20 years ago who I haven't seen in a long time. So it's just unbelievable that you all came out.
3 cheers for Joe Mill.
Oh, and how can I forget I see Cars fans? Judy, who drove all the way up from Connecticut just to be here, who's been following me. Cars fans are amazing, I tell you. I've been doing a lot of interviews, and I'm trying to get better at it. But a common thing that they ask me in these interviews is what the Cars fans think of this. Because other than my immediate family, of course, I did this for the Cars fans. They have been unbelievable. When I started this project and Cars fans started to hear about what I was doing, they would send me a note or an email or call me and say, you know, let me know when this thing comes out. And of course I didn't realize it was going to take as long as it did. You know, when you have a full-time job and you do other freelance writing and you have a family, and so I just kind of did it in my spare time. So I didn't realize it was going to take this long. But Cars fans have stuck with me the whole way. It's a pretty amazing thing. So I really appreciate you all coming. And like I said, I'm not much of a talker. That's why I became a writer. So I'm going to try to keep things as short and simple as we can. So again, thanks for everyone for coming. The first thing I want to do is show a slideshow presentation. This was created by my good friend and public relations coordinator, Donna Neal, who can't be here today because she lives in Idaho. So I guess that's a good reason for not being here. But her and her son created this. It's only about 5 minutes long, but it features most of the photos that are in the book and a couple other ones. And the background music is all Cars songs and a couple solo songs that Ben sang. Because he was co-lead singer of the Cars, Rick Ocasek, the other co-lead singer. So all the songs you're hearing and the music that we're playing are all songs that were sung by Ben. And Ben's with me, for sure. So the first picture you'll see, I'll say it ahead of time, is me at age 13, I think, when I got a couple records for Christmas that my parents got for me. And I remember giving them a little list saying, okay, I want these albums, get these albums for me for Christmas, please. And I'm sure my dad had to go to the record store and search around for a while to find them. But so the very first picture is me with some albums around me, looking like a little goofball. And after that, it's all photos of Ben. And I also want to say that most of these photos are never before published photos. When I did interviews with people, I would ask them for photos, and a lot of these photos are literally people who knew Ben throughout his whole life, who are literally taking photos out of their personal photo albums for me and scanning them and sending them to me. So almost all of them have never been published before. They're from people's personal collection. I was an artist in high school, and I thought I was pretty good in high school until I got to college. And I can remember in college turning in our first art assignment. And I went to a pretty small school, so the art department, there wasn't a lot of students. There was maybe 25 or 30 of us in this room. And I can remember, you know, like when you do your project, you have to put it up in front of everybody so they can all critique it. And I can remember sitting at the desk going, okay, everybody in this room is better than me. So I don't know if I'm going to make it in the art field. But I stuck it through and got an associate's degree in art. But I'm a creative person, so I had to figure out a way to to be able to be creative, and I didn't think I was going to be good enough as an artist. I guess I don't know for sure, but that's what I sensed anyway. So writing, I was also taking creative writing classes and journalism classes in college too. I thought I could be pretty good at it, so I kind of went away from the art and kind of went in more to writing. So it became my creative outlet, and I kind of killed two birds with one stone because, as some of you know, who've known me for a long time, music's my passion. But I'm not a musician. I couldn't carry a tune if it had a handle on it. So writing was a way for me to still be involved in music somehow, because I could write about music, and a way for me to still be creative. So that's kind of how those two things came together, and that's how I started pursuing my writing. So I think it was around 1998, I actually started getting a couple of things published. A little entertainment weekly in Keene, New Hampshire, that's not around anymore. So I started doing it that way, and tried to build up my portfolio a little bit, and then I eventually got a couple of music magazines to take a couple of my freelance articles, and I just started building from there. And then in the mid-2000s, I got to a point where I thought maybe I knew enough about it where I could try to make it a full-time job. So I did. I became a sports editor for a weekly paper based in Chester called The Message, and I started out as a sports editor there. Had a little weekly sports column that I did, and of course wrote about music and arts and entertainment too. So I did that. I was a sports writer for a couple years, and then one of the co-editors left, so I got promoted to co-editor. So I did that for a couple of years, and then the newspaper got sold, and I guess I didn't lose my job, but I couldn't wait around for them to find another buyer. So the co-editor and I, Bob Smith, who has lived in this area for many years, and people who are local probably know Bob. I know a couple people here know Bob. Bob and I, another publisher came in and asked us if we wanted to start our own weekly paper, and they would foot the bill, if you will, to get us going. So I was actually co-editor at a weekly paper that I helped start for a while, and I did that for a couple years, and then that paper went under. So as you know, newspapers is just a dying breed now with the internet and the way media is now. Newspapers aren't what they once were. So I said to myself, am I going to keep going to another newspaper and get settled in there and then have that one go under? And am I just going to keep doing this? So that's when I decided to not work for anybody else as a writer anymore, and I started continuing with my freelance writing. And 4 years ago, I launched my own website called Standing Room Only, and I started doing that. I'm still doing that. And what I like about that is no deadlines, nobody telling me what to write about, nobody telling me what to do. I can write what I want and write about who I want. And it's worked out really well. And I still do my freelance writing on the side. So that's kind of how my writing thing went. And while I was doing all that, I started contemplating writing a book. Wasn't quite sure what I was going to write about, although I knew it would be music related. I had a short list of ideas that I was thinking about. And to be honest, the Cars and Ben Orr wasn't on my short list. I mean, the Cars are one of my favorite bands, and I've loved them since I've loved music. Excuse me. But he wasn't on my short list. So I was still contemplating what I was going to write about. And then one day I got a phone call out of the blue from a Cars fan. And this was even before Facebook. She said she saw my MySpace account. So any of you remember MySpace, that's how far back this goes. So she said she saw my MySpace page. She saw that I was a fan of rock and roll. She saw that I was a music journalist. She saw that I was from Boston, which is where the Cars actually launched their career. She saw that I lived in Vermont, and Ben Orr lived in Vermont at the end of his life. So she saw all these little parallels, and she said, "I think you should write about Ben." I'm like, who is this person? I mean, this is out of the blue. So I was like, well, I love the Cars, but why wouldn't I just write about the band? Why pick one individual? And all she said was, you should investigate him and look into his life a little bit, and maybe you change your mind. So that's what I did. I started investigating Ben, and I found out some things that I didn't know about him. He's originally from Cleveland, which is the home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so I thought that was pretty cool in itself right there. And as a matter of fact, the Cars just got elected to the Hall of Fame in April, and I went to Cleveland and I was in the building for that ceremony, which was pretty cool. And Ben is also, believe it or not, the first native Clevelander to ever be elected into the Rock Hall. So that was pretty cool, going to see that. So anyway, I see that he's from Cleveland, and I do a little more investigating, and I find out that he was a teen star in that city, if you will. There was a show in Cleveland called Upbeat, and it was kind of like the music TV show American Bandstand. It was kind of like the Cleveland version of American Bandstand. So they'd bring in these national artists to lip sync their songs, but they would have, what was different than American Bandstand is they would bring house bands in to play behind these artists. So to find these house bands, they would go into the city of Cleveland and find the hottest bands in the town at the time, you know, and bring those bands in and have them be house bands. Well, Ben, he knew he wanted to be a rock star from like age 10. He knew that's all he wanted to do. There was no backup plan. That's all he wanted to do. And so much so, I know this will sound strange nowadays, but he was so determined that he actually quit school when he was a sophomore in high school with his parents' blessing, because they knew how talented he was, to pursue his career in music. So I thought to myself, okay, here's this kid. His band was called the Grasshoppers, and they called them the Grasshoppers because they tended to leap around a lot on stage and be demonstrative. So his band was one of the hottest bands in the city at the time, and they chose his band to be one of the house bands on this show. And Upbeat ended up being a syndicated show in like 100 cities across the country. So here's this 17-year-old kid who knew he wanted to be a rock star, who quit school to do it, and his first band is on a nationally syndicated television show. And this is like 15 years before he ever became famous in the Cars. So I'm like, this is unbelievable. I didn't know any of this stuff. So I contacted a couple of friends of mine who were also Cars fans, and nobody knew this about him. So that was the hook for me. If he didn't do all that stuff when he was young, I probably wouldn't have chosen him to write about. But that got me hooked. And so what I did from there is, once I made the decision to write this book about him, I spent the first year just researching as much as I could and created a structure, the basic story of the book. But unfortunately, Ben passed away in 2000 from pancreatic cancer, so he was already passed away for several years when I started to do this. So obviously I couldn't interview Ben himself. So what's the next best thing? You find as many people as you can who knew him so they could be his voice. So I started contacting people that knew him, and everybody I talked to gave me somebody else to talk to, and they gave me somebody else to talk to, and it just went on and on and on. And I interviewed everybody from family members to bandmates from his first band when he was 13 years old, to junior high school and high school friends. And then after he became famous and they went to Boston, I interviewed record executives, rock photographers, fans, anybody that knew him. So I ended up interviewing over time over 120 people who knew him. So I think this paints a pretty good picture of the way he was. And it was a pretty amazing journey. So that's kind of how it all happened. And I didn't think it was going to take this long. And it's almost like, I've said this in a couple interviews, after a while, you know, you tell your friends and your family they're doing this, and they back you and they believe in you. But if it was me, I would have even been saying, okay, Joe, you know, let me know when it's out, okay? Kind of a thing. It's almost like you're crying wolf. So a lot of people stuck by me for a long time. And like I said before, especially the Cars fans. Cars fans would hear about my book and they'd get a hold of me. And I just started a mailing list and said, okay, give me your name and your email, and someday when this comes out, I'll let you know. and that list grew to over 1,000 fans. And hopefully they're all buying a book. That's a joke, though. When you do something for a decade, I hope that shows that money is not the motivating factor. Do I want to sell some books? Absolutely, and I thank every one of you for buying a book. It means a lot to me. But money wasn't the main factor in this. It turned into a labor of love, and even though I never met Ben, in some strange way, I feel like I do know him. I just talked to so many people that knew him. And there were so many common threads, too. He was a very loyal guy. You saw in a couple of those pictures, I kind of pointed out that he was wearing a Cleveland shirt. And the last interview he did before he passed away, he was wearing a Cleveland Browns jersey. He was a very loyal guy. He never forgot where he came from. I interviewed some of his friends that he was friends with, when they were this big. And they told me that even after he became famous, he never forgot his friends. The Cars would go on tour, and when they were getting ready to hit his hometown of Cleveland, he'd call up all his friends and say, "Hey, get ready, I'm coming to town." And he would get them tickets, backstage passes, limo rides from their house, wouldn't let him spend a dime. And he didn't just do this once. Every time the Cars went on tour, he got a hold of all his friends, and he never forgot where he came from. So he was a very loyal guy, and just a special person, and an incredible musician. Another thing that really stands out to me about Ben was that he could play anything. His first band at age 13, he was a drummer. Then when he went to the Grasshoppers, they needed a singer, so he became the singer and the guitar player. And then when they got to the Cars, they already had a guitar player, they needed a bass player. Okay, I'll do that. So he was a very versatile musician, could play anything. One of the iconic rock voices ever. To me, he's right up there with, David Bowie and Paul McCartney and Paul Rogers of Bad Company is another one that comes to mind. But to me, Ben is right up there with all of those people. Just an incredible musician. And so that's kind of how this all happened. I feel like Ben's with me. It's funny. There were times where, maybe not get discouraged, but there were times where I'm like, okay, is this ever going to end? Am I ever going to be able to finish this thing? But Ben would appear, this is going to sound crazy, but Ben would appear in mysterious ways to me. I'd be wondering if I'm going to be able to finish this book. And if I do finish it, am I even going to find a publisher? And you have doubts and things like that. And then I'd be driving around and a car song would come on the radio. And I'd go, okay, Ben, I'll keep going. So I always felt like he was with me. And I know some of you have read the book, so I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't, but I've got this one last little story. When I went to Cleveland and went to the Rock Hall and saw their induction ceremony, I was in Cleveland for 4 or 5 days. And the day before I was leaving to come back home, I went to visit him at his grave. And that was emotional, for sure. And so I sat there with him, and contemplated things for a while. So then I kind of said to myself, it was a dreary day and it was rainy, and I was like, give me some kind of sign, Ben, that I'm here. And I kind of saw the trees blowing up in the wind, and I'm like, okay, I'll take that as a sign. That's what it is. Ben's here with me. I know he is. So I walked away, and Donna, my PR person, she went to the ceremony too. She actually got me the ticket to go to this. So she was with me when we went to the gravesite. And so we're getting ready to leave, and I get in the car, and I'm looking at the trees again, and I see him blowing, and I'm like, okay, Ben's here with me. And we turn the car on to get ready to leave, and right on cue, a Cars song comes on the radio. Ben's singing. And the lyrics were, I don't mind you coming here, you're wasting all my time. And it's the truth. And Donna was right there, and she heard it too. And my whole body just turned into goosebumps. I really felt like he was there, like he knew what I did. the hair on the back of my neck stood up. It was incredible. And all I could do was start laughing. I looked at Donna and I'm like, can you believe this? And she's looking back at me going, he's here somehow. It was just an unbelievable moment. I wrote about that in the afterword of the book. So I really do feel like he somehow knows what I did. And Cars fans know how great Ben was. And I think some rock fans in general know how great Ben was. But I'm hoping that this book will enlighten a lot of other people about how great a guy he was. And I just admire him so much to know what you want to do from such an early age and feel it so much that you're willing to quit school and somehow convince your parents to let you do that. I don't know how he pulled that off, but and to just be determined to do it. And you know, he met Rick Ocasek, who also lived, his family moved to the Cleveland area at the time, and they got together. They met each other at a party one night, and there was an acoustic guitar sitting there, and Ben picked it up and sang a Beatles song to Rick, and Rick said it was the most incredible voice he ever heard. They became partners right then, and they toiled for about a decade trying to make it. Different bands, different band members, trying to find the right combination of bands at the right time for music. And they traveled all over the country. They went from Minnesota and Michigan to New York City to upstate New York, back to Ohio again. Then they eventually landed in Boston in the early 70s, and they finally found the right combination of guys, and they got their record deal. So he just had a lot of determination, and he wasn't going to stop until he did what he wanted to do. And now the man's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in his hometown. So pretty amazing story. So that kind of tells you why I did it, and now here we are. To have that book in my hands, to know the book is coming and to get that box in the mail. It had like 30 books in it. And my daughter, where's my wife? Here she is. Them right there with me and opening up that box and seeing those books. And I think Erin might have been more excited than me. She jumped in and grabbed the book before I could even touch one. She grabbed the book and she started hugging it. Right? Yeah. So that was an incredible moment to finally have the books in my hand. So anything from here is gravy. Do I want to sell a lot of books? Absolutely. I put a lot of time into this. It's funny, I used to keep a log of the hours I was putting in, just to kind of keep track of it. And geez, maybe after 5 years ago, I said, okay, I'm not going to keep track anymore. Because I'll have to sell 1 trillion books to make up for the amount of time I put into it. But in all seriousness, it's been a labor of love. It's what I love to do. And being able to combine writing and music and write about somebody that was such a cool person and a talented guy. And to actually have some fans out there that appreciate what I did is a really cool thing. So that's kind of all how it happened. And here I am now, and I look around at all you people, and I can't thank you enough for coming tonight. And so what I'm going to do from here, I don't know if anybody has any questions. If you've been hearing me talk about this forever, I might have already answered every question there is to answer. And I've done some radio interviews, so if anybody has questions, I can take them now. And then after that, I'm going to sign some books, whoever wants to have a book signed. And then after we do that, we're going next door to Popolo's. We got some hors d'oeuvres over there, so I invite everybody over there to have a drink and have something to eat and celebrate this with me. And I just can't thank you all enough for coming. I really appreciate it. So I'm hoping somebody else can talk, so I don't have to. Well, I guess I have to answer the questions, don't I? What good is that? The Cars fan.
I have a question.
Yep.
Are you going to write a second book that's going to have all the other pictures in them?
Gee, why are you asking me that, Judy? There's a little inside joke there. Let's see, how do I say this? A lot of female Cars fans say that Ben's real easy on the eyes. And there were some female Cars fans who were a little disappointed that this wasn't a picture book. Oh, you mean there's words in there? You mean I got to read? something about the photos I didn't mention was that a lot of these photos are from people's personal collections. I collected over 500 photos along the way from different people, family and friends, and so when I went to publish this book, and it came time to pick out the photos, my rep at the publisher said, "Okay, Joe, we can put 35 photos in this book." 35? Do you know that I have 500? So that was almost as hard as writing the book. I had to go through 500 photos and try to pick out 35 for this book. That was a pretty tough thing. So the joke is, I got female fans who are getting in touch with me telling me I need to do a sequel to this book and that it should be a picture book so I can put the other 480 in there just so they can look at Ben all day, I guess. So
There you go.
I noticed that there
You
were
can do
like
that.
2 or 3 on your slideshow that weren't in the book, so
Yeah.
thank you for that.
you're very welcome. We decided to sneak a couple more in there. As you might guess, Donna wanted to put a few more in there. I said, Donna, this thing can't be more than 5 minutes or so. Or if she had her way, she would have put a lot more in.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the fans tell me that if I actually did do a second book and make it more of a picture book kind of thing, but maybe because there was a lot of interview stuff that didn't end up going in the book. I actually could do another book, believe it or not, on Ben. I could include a lot of photos and other interviews, and there's people that are still getting a hold of me right now saying they want to talk to me about Ben, and I'm like, well, the book's done. There's nothing I can do about it now. So I could keep doing interviews. I really could. I am going to do another book. I got to promote this one for a few months. I put so much time into it that I need to promote it and try to get as many books in as many people's hands as I can. But I'm thinking in the spring, I'm probably going to start thinking about something else. All I can tell you is it'll be music related. What it's going to be yet, I'm not sure. I've got another short list. Who knows, maybe another fan will call me and tell me what I should write about, and I'll take it from there.
There you go.
But I will do another book. I'm just not quite sure what it is yet. But to do another book about Ben, I actually did run the idea by my rep at the publisher. And she said that that's not really the norm to do a second book like that about the same subject. But she also said, let's see how the sales go.
That's good.
Yep, she did. And she said, if you can do a proposal and convince us that all the people who bought the first book might buy the second one. And I immediately told her, I go, well, I know all the Cars fans will at least. So I know the Cars fans will buy them. And I mean, the Cars sold 30 million albums in their day. So there's a lot of people out there who like the Cars. I just got to find them. So that's my quest for the next few months, to find as many Cars fans as I can to get this book. So I can't promise it, but it'll be on the list. And if the publisher tells me to do it, I'll seriously consider it, for sure.
Good.
First of all, congratulations. Second, have you gotten any feedback from any of the interviewers on the book? Have they seen any of the book at all? And
Oh, yeah.
what's their feedback on it?
Yep. When I got my box of books, I had about, I mean, obviously I interviewed 120 people, so I can't give them all a book. But there were a select few that really helped me a lot. Especially, you know, it was easy to find information about Ben after we became famous in the Cars. I mean, you can go on the internet and plug in the Cars and you can read about it all day long. But his early days in Cleveland, that stuff was hard to find and dig up. Because, you know, when he was in Cleveland, we were talking the late 50s and the early 60s, and, you know, the media was a lot less, and it was really hard to find information about him. So that's when I started finding friends that he grew up with and those types of people. And there's about a half a dozen people that I became really close to over the years and who gave me a lot of photos. So those are the people, the Cleveland people are the ones I signed books for and mailed out to them, and they all called me up and thrilled with the book. If there's something they don't like about it, they're sparing me, and they're not telling me, because I've only gotten positive feedback. And so far, reviews have come back positive. You know, friends and family, you know, I suppose somebody might have the gall to go, hey, Joe, that stinks. What did you do that for? Yeah, see? Stick your tongue out at me? But generally speaking, I've gotten positive reviews so far. I really have. It's been really cool, especially the Cleveland fans. And I mean, this one woman, her name is Diane, who gave me that photo right there, who gave me, man, probably maybe 60% of the photos that I have came from her. And I called her up one day. You know, we would talk every few months or something like that, and I'd give her an update and that kind of thing. And it was really cool one day to call her and go, "Hey, Diane, guess what? I got books in my hand." And silence on the other end. "Are you joking?" "No, I'm not joking. I'm signing it right now for you." And I sent it out to her in the mail. And 4 or 5 days later, I got a call from her, and she was crying. She couldn't even talk. I didn't even know who it was for a minute. I'm listening like, who is this person? So I've really gotten good feedback from especially the fans in Cleveland who helped me a lot along the way. So I've gotten good response so far, thankfully. Yep.
I remember seeing the picture in the book when he was a young kid, and then I said, "Do you suppose he thought he was going to be a musician when he grew up?" And he did. And he started that at that young age.
Yeah, absolutely. He said in a Rolling Stone magazine interview once, his earliest recollection of wanting to be an entertainer, he was literally 5 years old. And he would go in his living room, his parents would have people over to visit, and he would like sing Elvis songs to them. Ben was a big Elvis fan, and when he was 17 and the Grasshoppers were getting big, that's the Mixed Emotions, the band after that. One of his best friends, who I also signed a book to and who also called me up crying, said that people were calling him the Elvis of Cleveland. 17 years old, and people were walking around calling him the Elvis of Cleveland. And he even had female fans following him around back then. This guy said everywhere he went. Ben was the type of guy, he said, he could walk into a room and you wouldn't even know who he was, but he just like drew people to him. He had this magnetic personality, and wherever he went, I had many people I interviewed tell me that he always had just this aura around him. Like you just knew that he was somebody. He was a really incredible guy. But yeah, to know what you want to do from about the age of 5 and to actually see it through. And like I said, no backup plan. He was going to be a musician. That's all he wanted to do. And he ends up in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in his hometown. So I don't know. Can't get much better than that, I don't think.
Nope.
So.
How did he happen to end up in Vermont?
Well, he owned a house outside of Boston because the Cars kind of launched out of that city. And when the Cars broke up in the late 80s, he just wanted to get away from music. And anywhere he went in the Boston area, he just had people following him around. And yeah, they all knew who he was. So he wanted to get away from all that. And he was also an outdoorsman. It was kind of weird. You see this with the Cars anyway, this glamorous looking rock star, you know, dressed to the nines. But he was actually an outdoorsman. He was a hunter and a fisherman and liked to be in the woods. So that's why he came to Vermont. He sold his house in Boston and moved to Vermont and just wanted to kind of settle back and get away from music for a while. And he did. He didn't do music for a couple of years. And then he got the itch again. And he never did a solo. He did a solo album in the 80s. But after the Cars broke up, he went away from music for a while. Then when he came back to music again and got that itch, he formed his own solo band called the Orr Band. And he never ended up doing an album, but he just wanted to perform. And he wouldn't care. I mean, he would play here. He didn't have to have big venues. He didn't have to have thousands of people around him. He would have sat right here and played for us. That's the kind of guy he was. He just loved music and wanted to play music. So that's why he went to Vermont. He just needed to get away from Boston and get away from that whole star thing.
Where in Vermont?
Reading, which is about an hour north of here, I believe. I went up there once.
About 40 minutes.
Yeah, it's pretty close. Really small town. I mean, you blink and you're through it. But I went up there a couple of times, and I did interview a couple people in Vermont that became friends with him. And one guy in particular said that he could go to Ben's house and just hang out with him. And Ben taught him chords, and here's this famous guy who wanted to get away from music after a while. But if you were his friend, he'd do anything for you. So the guy would come knock on his door, and they'd hang out together, and he'd teach him how to write songs and play music, and Ben was just a regular guy. One more thing I can say about Ben is he kind of flipped a switch to go on stage and be a rock star. He was a real private guy off stage. So he'd flip a switch and he'd go on stage and entertain everybody, and then he'd come off stage and flip that switch off and just be a regular guy. He avoided the spotlight for the most part. But he was really loyal to the fans. I had a couple of people I interviewed tell me that if there were 100 people around him who wanted an autograph, he'd stand there and sign every single one. So he always was good to the fans, but he avoided the spotlight. I noticed after a while I would see Carr's interviews, and all the other guys in the band would talk a lot and Ben wouldn't say much. So he avoided the spotlight for the most part, but he was very loyal to the fans and always very appreciative of the fans, though, for sure. My daughter has a question. What's your question?
Did you interview his last wife or his son?
He was married twice. I interviewed both of his ex-wives. He had another woman that he was a significant other who they never got married, but they worked on his solo album together. I interviewed her. And I also interviewed the mother of his son. Ben's son is very quiet, shy guy, and I did talk to him. He didn't want to be involved in the book though, but I did talk to him and he gave me his blessing, and I sent him an invitation to tonight, kind of hoping he would be here, but I kind of knew he wouldn't be. But yes, and I didn't, how do I say this? Let's just say I was talking before about how a lot of the female fans were very interested in Ben. And I got a lot of calls from people who wanted to be interviewed for the book, who knew Ben. But as far as females in his life, I only interviewed and put in the book women who were like really significant in his life and were very important to him. Those are the females that I wanted to have in the book. And I am proud that and some of these interviews took me forever because Ben was so private. When I would approach, they don't know me from a hole in the wall, so I'd approach somebody and say, hey, I'm writing a book about Ben, can I interview? And they were very hesitant. They were very protective of him and protective of his legacy. And they were like, yeah, I don't know if Ben would want you writing a book. He's a very private guy. So I got to the point, I actually developed a system with these people. I say, look, I'll interview you. I'll create the quotes of what I want to go in the book. I'll show them to you. I'll put them in the manuscript, and I'll cut and paste it, and I'll send it to you in an email, and you can look at it, and you can tell me what you want in or out. I'll edit whatever you want. But these people were so concerned about preserving Ben's legacy that a lot of them were hesitant to even be in my book because they didn't know what I was going to say about him. So that a lot of these people, I had to gain their trust. And the mother of his son, it literally took me a few years to get her to be in my book. I wasn't calling her once a week or nothing, but a couple times a year, I just, hey, calling to say hi, and this is what I'm doing, and wanted to check in. And after a while, I finally convinced her, and when she didn't give me much, but she gave me a couple little anecdotes for the story. And when I finally did get her in the book and thanked her, she told me that I was the first and only media person that she ever talked to about Ben. Not so much now because he's been gone for 10 years, or 20 years, excuse me. Been gone for 20 years. But she told me that I was the only one that she felt she could trust, and she actually gave me something for the book. So that was a big moment for me to have her trust me enough to talk to me about the book. So that was actually a big moment for me, for sure. Yeah.
Question.
Yes.
If Ben was still alive and you had the option or the opportunity to sit down with him, what is something that you would ask him or say to him?
That's a good one.
Ooh, thanks. Been thinking about that one.
Trying to put me on the spot, niece?
That's what I do.
Niece and godchild. I think that I always, a lot of the people I interviewed would tell me a lot about his personal life, but I think I would want to sit down with him and just talk music with him in general. I'd want to talk to him about what bands he loved when he started out, who influenced him,
His inspiration.
you know, yeah, who were your favorite singers, what bands made you want to be a rock star and pursue this as a career. I think that would be the kind of things I would want to talk to him about. just the kind of music he liked and that kind of thing. I think that would be something I'd like to talk to him about for sure. Big brother. 6 o'clock?
Yes, sir.
Hey, I told him on the side, hey man, I'm gonna have to like be done with this at some point, so let everybody know that, you know, we're done here. So thanks for that. So hey, I appreciate everybody coming and taking the time to come to this event. I can't even begin to tell you what it means to me.
Champagne.